Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I think you were going to indulge the Congresswoman from Florida and her point of inquiry.
The gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding that...
Are you making a point of order?
No, I'm asking you a question.
Okay.
A point of inquiry.
Okay.
It's my understanding that the minority in this committee under the rules is entitled to the same testimony, information, documents that the majority is entitled to. So, I mean, I'm not aware that you're able to withhold information from the minority that we would need to use to prepare for.
When it comes to whistleblowers, you're not. And I would just remind the committee, remind everyone. Look, when it comes to whistleblowers, you are not.
That's not right.
It's shocking that the
That
gentleman.
is not right.
It's shocking
and in
that
fact,
the gentleman.
You talk so much about the
Mr. Chairman,
whistleblower and the impeachment.
It's shocking that the gentleman from New York
all of
would
the
state
information
that
we had.
when you were part of an investigation with an anonymous whistleblower.
Mr. Chairman, these individuals
Mr. Chairman,
haven't been declared
I can't hear
whistleblowers.
5 people at once. Could we have regular order?
Mr. Chairman,
Chair recognizes it's.
I'm inquiring, and I was not.
And I've
finished
told you
inquiring.
that when it comes to whistleblowers, you are not entitled to it. That's
These
at the discretion of Mr. Allen.
Mr. Chairman, these
And he
individuals
said
have been determined
he has
not
not
to be
agreed to that.
whistleblowers. These are not whistleblowers. They've been determined by the agency not to be whistleblowers. Are you deciding that they're whistleblowers?
Yes, the law decides. Did you not listen to Mr. Levitt's testimony? Did you not read the law? The
His
law
attorney
decides
is
that they are
asserting-
whistleblowers.
his attorney
the
is
chair
asserting that
recognizes
they are
the gentlelady
whistleblowers.
from
The
New
law
York.
has not
The
determined
gentlelady
that
from
they are
New York has been
whistleblowers.
recognized.
The law has not determined they are whistleblowers. His attorney is just asserting that.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to move quickly through a couple different questions. We established earlier credibility matters, certainly for witnesses who appear before us. Mr. Boyle, do you know who Kash Patel is?
I do.
Have you received any money from Kash Patel or his organization?
I have.
When you previously met with the majority members and/or majority staff of this committee, was Kash Patel present for that meeting?
No.
To your knowledge, has Kash Patel ever spoken to the committee members on your behalf?
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of. Was anyone present for your previous meetings with committee members and staff on the majority that were not members of this committee or staff of this committee?
My counsel.
Your counsel? Anyone else?
I don't think so. No.
Is Kash Patel helping you finance your counsel?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Mr. Friend, what about you? Do you know Kash Patel as well?
Yes.
And did you receive any money from Kash Patel?
Yes, he gave me a donation last November.
A donation?
Yes.
Are you a charitable organization?
I was an unpaid, indefinitely suspended man trying to feed his family, and he reached out to me and said he wanted to give me a donation.
Did he have any, was he present for any of your meetings with committee members or staff?
No.
And how many times did you meet with the committee members or staff prior to your transcribed interview?
I never met with them prior to my transcript.
Did you speak to them on the phone?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so you spoke to them on the phone.
Yes, I spoke to them on the phone, corresponded.
Did you provide documents?
Yes, I gave them my written declaration.
Did they ask you whether they could share that with the minority?
I don't know. At the time, I don't believe they were actually in the majority.
Did they ask you whether they could share the documents?
I don't remember if they did or didn't.
I want to focus a little bit on that SWAT case that you mentioned, Mr. Friend, where the SWAT team was used to make an arrest of someone associated with the domestic violent extremist group. That was not your case?
That was a case that was within my office. The Joint Terrorism Task Force sort of ran all the cases together.
Okay. Well, did you work on that case?
My name is on it. I did not perform work for it.
Got it. And what evidence did you have that this defendant had offered to surrender to the FBI?
The evidence I had was in his conversations with the individuals from my office who he spoke to. He said that he would cooperate.
So he said he would cooperate with the FBI, but he never told you that he would surrender to an arrest. Those are two different things, you agree, right?
No, I wouldn't. If somebody told me that if you need anything from me, just let me know, I'll cooperate, I would interpret that to mean I could reach out to them if I had a criminal charge.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. All right, that's certainly not my experience. Mr. Allen, You passed around information to other members of the FBI related to January 6th, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you were admonished by your supervisor not to do that, is that right?
I was not, sir.
You were not. So when it says here in the FBI's letter to Mr. Jorman of yesterday that your supervisor admonished you to stop circulating these materials on multiple occasions, you're saying right now that the FBI is lying to this committee?
That statement that they wrote is inaccurate.
Okay. Did you write to your colleagues to, quote, exercise extreme caution and discretion in pursuit of any investigative inquiries or leads pertaining to the events of January 6th?
Yes, I corresponded with my teammates.
Did you write that?
Yes, I wrote those words in the correspondence.
And that was after you had been admonished not to send information about January 6th, right?
I was not admonished to not send information.
But you do agree that your personal opinion should not influence your official duties, don't you?
No, you should be objective and analytical in all the, decisions and information.
No, that was my question. Your personal views should not influence your official duties.
No, you should be objective in doing the conduct of your job.
And now, Mr. Friend and Mr. O'Boyle, I don't have much time, but you agree that you were field agents, correct?
Correct?
And you understand chain of command, do you not, Mr. O'Boyle?
I do.
Right, so that if you make a suggestion to a supervisor and your supervisor overrules you, that's the nature of the business, isn't it?
Not if it's a violation of a law.
And you make decisions about whether grand jury subpoenas should be served or not as a field agent of the FBI?
Time the gentleman is
If I have a
expired.
reasonable belief, I can make a protected disclosure, which is what I've done.
Okay, but do you think you make those
Time of the
decisions?
gentleman is expired. Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes himself. Mr. O'Boyle, why do you think they came down on you so darn hard? Deep down, what do you think their motivation is?
I think the agency as a whole wants to get rid of people who simply just don't toe the line that they want. They don't want critical thinkers. They don't want people who raise valid questions to their chain of command.
They want to send a message, don't they?
Absolutely.
They want to make you an example, don't they?
Yes.
And they don't care. They want to send that message so hard, so strong, they don't care that you served 6 years in the Army, member of the 101st Airborne, took enemy fire, was selected for a special new unit they were putting in Quantico. They wanted to send such a message that they said, if we can get this guy, we can get this guy to be quiet, we can get everybody to be quiet. That's what they were doing, wasn't it?
Yes, sir, especially since I just had a baby who was 2 weeks old, and we had just sold our house.
Just to put the emphasis on it, they said, we're going to do it the day he arrives. The day we've worked with him, we selected him, he's done a great job in the FBI, he served our country, took an oath to the Constitution, took an oath to defend this country. He's going to move, we're going to send all his stuff in this van to this moving. We're going to do that. When the day he arrives, we're going to suspend him. We're not going to let his family get their belongings. We're not going to let him get his clothes for his kids, his winter coats for his children. We're going to send a message. And they did. They suspended you. They took your pay. They don't let you get health insurance. They made life miserable for you to send a message. Because you know what? You reported on the first big screw up they had in this administration. The first big one. You reported to us as a whistleblower about the school board's issue. The Biden administration, they thought this was going to be a win for them politically. They thought it was going to make Terry McAuliffe governor of Virginia. Backfired on him. And you reported. Would it surprise you, Mr. O'Boyle, to know that the FBI told us they looked at 25 parents who were reported on this snitch line that was set up with this memorandum from the Attorney General? They looked at 25 parents. How many do you think of them were actually ever investigated and prosecuted? How many think were prosecuted, Mr. O'Boyle?
If I had to guess, I'd say 0.
0. 0. And you came to us because you say this is wrong. This is wrong to set up some federal snitch line, some neighbor calling in because they don't like their neighbor's politics, reporting to the FBI, go investigate these parents. They said, we got to get this guy. We got to get Garrett O'Boyle because you had the courage to step forward. And it's not just with this issue, because we have the memorandum from the Richmond field office about Catholics, right? If you're pro-life, pro-family, and you're Catholic, look out. The FBI wanted to put people inside the church, inside the parish, to spy on fellow citizens. Does that surprise you, Mr. O'Boyle, that actually happened in the Richmond field office?
It doesn't, not anymore.
Scary. And you know that memorandum, by the way? It was signed off by 5 people in that office. One of them was the chief division counsel, a lawyer who supposedly went to law school and probably had a course on the Constitution, signed off on that memorandum. Scary stuff. Scary stuff. Mr. Allen, you served 20 years. You had a security clearance for 20 years. You served our country as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Honorably discharged.
Yes, sir.
Won medals from the Marine Corps.
Yes, sir.
They came after you too, didn't they? And you simply did. Mr. Goldman just asked you a few questions. You were simply doing your job. Your job as an analyst is to compile information, open source information, present that to your colleagues so they're fully informed about the case. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you did that job, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
You followed your oath, right?
Yes, sir.
You adhered to the rule of law.
Correct, sir.
You were consistent with the Constitution, just like the oath you took when you signed both as serve our country in the military and at the FBI.
Yes, sir.
And you did the same thing, didn't you, Mr. Friend?
Yes, sir.
And yet you felt the full weight of the federal government come down on you guys. And of course, they timed it perfectly. They sent a letter to us yesterday. We knew they would. We knew it was going to happen that way. And as Mr. Boyle said earlier, he's getting his hearing tomorrow, right, Mr. Boyle?
That's when they tried to schedule it. We've not heard back.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your service to the country. Mr. Bishop was right. The poise, the way you've handled yourself, the gentleman way you've handled yourself here, the way you've served our country, it does not go unnoticed. The American people appreciate what you've done for our country and what you are doing for our country. God bless you. I yield back. Now, the chair now recognizes Mr. Allred. Gentleman from Texas, recognized.
I yield my time to Mr. Goldman.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman for yielding. I want to thank those of our witnesses here who have served in the military for your military service. I want to thank you for coming in. We on this side support whistleblowers. I certainly support whistleblowers, and you and the committee majority can be certain that we will follow all House rules and to maintain the confidentiality of whistleblowers until they have been publicly identified, as you all now have here. What our concern with is not really at the bottom whether or not you are whistleblowers. That's something that neither you can determine, or Mr. Levitt can determine, or we can determine. That's something that we understand is being adjudicated and ultimately could end up in court, where the ultimate determination would be. Our concern is that you all have met with the committee majority, perhaps several times. You have provided information, documents, testimony, and we're in the dark. And that's not how Congress works. That's not how committees work. And I'm sure, Mr. Levitt, you would agree with me that when you were on the Hill, that's not how things work. And so that is what, sorry?
I just said it depended on what was happening. I've seen examples of congressional staff retaliating against whistleblowers, and I've also seen those whistleblowers then refuse to engage with those congressional staff. Fair
enough, and maybe that happens, but we haven't even been given the opportunity to do that in violation of committee rules. Ultimately, what we are here for is because these 3 individuals are expressing in various degrees their objection to their treatment with the FBI. They have also, in varying degrees, expressed support for the January 6th insurrection, and in some cases have even allowed those personal views to influence their official duties. Now, the allegations that we are dealing with here today, and the reason why whether or not people are whistleblowers matters or your credibility matters, is you're just the 3 individuals, 3 people in an organization of tens of thousands who are making these allegations, and so credibility does matter. I was a federal prosecutor for 10 years working alongside the good men and women of the FBI. I never once had a political conversation. I never once had any politics interfere with the work that we were doing as part of our official duties. And if I did, I would certainly call it out and report it up the chain. That is not appropriate. And I am alarmed on their behalf that so many of the good men and women of the FBI are being called out for being, quote, what one of my colleagues said is a political arm of the Democratic Party. Now, you all would agree real quick that credibility matters, right? You're all agents or current or former agents of the FBI. Is that right, Mr. O'Boyle?
correct?
Yeah, Mr. Friend
Yes.
and Mr. Allen, right?
I'm a staff operations specialist, sir.
So you don't believe credibility matters?
Credibility does matter, sir, but I'm a staff operations specialist. That's my official.
But let's take the chairman's opening statement for a second. He said in his opening statement about the John Durham report that Mr. Durham found that there was no predicate and no basis to open the investigation. I'm going to read you a paragraph from page 295 of the Durham report. It says, under the FBI's guidelines, the investigation could have been opened more appropriately as an assessment or preliminary investigation. FBI investigations opened as preliminary investigations, short of full investigations, if necessary and appropriate, may be escalated under the guidelines by converting to a full investigation with supervisory approval. Mr. O'Boyle, does that sound like Mr. Durham determined that there was no basis at all to open an investigation, as the chairman said?
I would have to have more information, but based on what you just read, it sounds to me like, based on FBI rules, a preliminary investigation ought to have been opened if anything was going to be opened at all. And it sounds like it was opened straight as a full investigation.
Right.
But I also don't.
And you understand the difference is really just based on timelines and a slightly narrower range of authorities, but that preliminary investigations are often escalated to full investigations after some additional investigation, right?
They're also often just shut down.
Sure, right, of course. I see that my time is about to expire, and I look forward to my additional questions. But I would just note for all of us here that to use three individuals' personal experiences, including determinations based on a number of different levels of review at the FBI that you no longer warrant your security clearance, is a very bold and unfounded
Time the gentleman has expired.
to use
gentleman
to
from
claim that
Kentucky
the
is recognized for
FBI
5
is a
minutes.
weapon of the Democratic Party, and I
Gentleman
yield
from
back.
Kentucky is recognized.
Americans are upset and they are angry that the government's been weaponized against them. But I think they're better served if we remain dispassionate in reviewing this evidence. But I have to admit, I came here today trying to be dispassionate, but I'm feeling emotion. I'm feeling disgust. Before us, among these witnesses, is represented decades of exemplary service in the military, in the FBI, service to our country for which your families have sacrificed, for which you have sacrificed to give this service, and now the other side of the aisle just wants to disparage you, for bringing forth facts that the American people need to know, that we need to know if we're going to change these whistleblower laws so that you're not punished for bringing us the truth. This is our we've had 4 hearings, and I'm noticing a disturbing trend here. Big business is working with the government to weaponize against the American people. And, the government says, well, this is okay because we're not violating the Constitution. The big business is doing this voluntarily, and we saw this with social media companies. But I want to play testimony from a whistleblower who's not here with us today. If you could cue that up about how we've seen, in this instance, one of the biggest corporations in America working with the FBI to violate civil liberties.
I believe it was either on January 7th or 8th, the Bank of America, with no directive from the FBI, data mined its customer base. And data mined a date range of 5 to 7 years of any BOA customer who used a BOA product. And by BOA product, a debit card. They compiled that list, and then on top of that list, they put anyone who had purchased a firearm during any date.
I find that testimony chilling. That was the retired FBI supervisory intelligence analyst, George Hill, who gave us that testimony. And what he said there is that Bank of America compiled a list of everybody who used a credit card or a debit card between January 5th and January 7th inside of Washington, D.C., and gave that to the FBI. But before they did, They looked at anybody who had ever purchased a firearm, according to their records, and elevated those people to the top of the list. And they didn't geofence it to Washington, D.C. You could have, as Mr. Hill testified, you could have bought a gun in 1999 in Iowa with a Bank of America card, and then you got heightened attention, and then it was given to the FBI. Now, whether the FBI asked for this or whether they did this voluntarily is very chilling, because Bank of America, you know, they've got a lot of issues in front of the government. And this is where you get into this unhealthy feedback loop. Bank of America spent $250,000 lobbying us on the American Rescue Plan, issues related to Paycheck Protection Program, general issues related to data security, and general issues related to interchange, and general issues related to privacy. The irony of it. Bank of America is violating your privacy, working hand in glove with the FBI. Now, the FBI will say, we didn't ask for this, they just gave it to us. It doesn't matter. It's a violation when you get to this level of cooperation. Now, I want to turn to something else that's troubling me very much. The whistleblowers here before us today have described incentive-based payments related to increasing the number of criminal investigations. Mr. Friend and Mr. Allen, you've talked about this. Mr. Friend, can you tell us what that's about and why that might be unhealthy?
It's extremely unhealthy. It's called integrated program management. It's a process that the FBI uses annually to essentially establish arbitrary metrics for itself to achieve as far as opening up a certain number of cases and using certain tools and getting certain accomplishments.
This in football terms, this sounds eerily similar to the Saints bounty gate. If folks remember that. And that scandal, coaches would pay players cash bonuses for hits that would result in injuries to other players. Players would receive additional pay if their tackle resulted in an opposing player being taken out of the game. These non-contract bonuses were part of an underground culture that incentivized dirty behavior. When the activity was exposed, the Saints organization was widely condemned. The defensive coach was initially suspended indefinitely, and the head coach was suspended for an entire season. Somebody at the FBI needs to be suspended for the dirty tactics that they've used. If we recognize it in sports, it's not hard to recognize it here in government. And I yield back to balance my time.